Alrighty, welcome everybody back to something a little bit different here on the channel. If you don't know who I am by now, my name is David. I also go by Miller Football, and today I'm going to be answering some questions I got on Twitter. As you can see on your screen, I tweeted out, ask me anything, and I'll answer in a YouTube video. And if you saw this tweet, this is the YouTube video in question. I figured this would be a good way to kind of talk about some stuff that maybe I hadn't thought to talk about on here, or on TikTok, or on Twitter, or wherever. And also, it's a fun experience, get some of the viewers involved, all that kind of good stuff. So, should be a fun video. Hopefully, will be a little bit shorter than my usual content. Definitely not doing this because I just needed something to post today. But, all that being said, go ahead and jump into it. But before we do, I want to let you know, as you can see, I'm using a face cam in this video. With my goal of trying to do something a little bit better with every video. I had someone suggest that for these videos where I'm sitting down, I'm talking about things on Twitter, I should use a face cam. It's a little bit more engaging, it's a little bit different. So we're going to try it out. I'm going to tell you right now, it's a weird setup for me because if I tried to put my face cam on top of my actual monitor, it would be very elevated, it would be an awkward angle. Nobody wants that. So instead I've got it off to the side here. So if you see me looking back and forth, it's because I'm looking at my monitor, then looking to my camera, etc., etc. I'm not super great at looking into a camera. It's a whole thing we'll talk about, or we won't talk about it, I guess. We don't have to get into it, is a better way to put it. But at this point, I'm just rambling, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Our first question here is from Geek, who, if you don't know, is my co-host on the Run the North podcast, link in the description. And starting out, football related, do you think Ryan Poles already knows who the quarterback will be next year? I would tend to think he does. I would lean that direction because, first of all, I know a lot of us as Bears fans love Justin Fields. I love Justin Fields. I think it's kind of a no-brainer. You know, at this point, I think it's pretty apparent that Caleb Williams or Drake Maye, whoever, pick your poison, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I think it's pretty apparent that one of those two guys is going to be the pick at number one. I think it's pretty apparent that the Bears are going to hang on to that pick. Just because Fields really hasn't grown a ton. I've talked about it a lot on here. Fields has not grown enough to the point where you can justify passing on one of these two guys. They're going to have a ceiling that is much higher than Fields and a floor that is pretty much in line with where Fields is at right now. So I would say he knows just because it's kind of a no-brainer decision. Now, obviously, he's not going to let anybody know that. That would be really stupid for him to tip his hand in one way or the other. I think when we hire an offensive coordinator, that will really be what's the word I'm looking for here? The best indicator of what direction Chicago is going to go. Obviously, they've interviewed guys that fit both Caleb and Justin Fields very well. They interviewed Greg Roman, who has experience with running quarterbacks, and Lamar Jackson and Colin Kaepernick and all those guys. We also interviewed Cliff Kingsbury, who was literally Caleb Williams' quarterbacks coach last year. So, you know, he's looking at it both sides, turning over every stone, all that good stuff. But I would imagine as of right now, he knows who he wants the quarterback to be. And he's just kind of doing his due diligence at this point. Now, I don't think this is like set in stone. You can't change it. You know, draft day, write it down, Caleb Williams, no matter what, right? I don't know if it's that, because obviously there's a human element of it. And they see Justin Fields work every day. The guy works his ass off. So maybe that throws a wrench into it. But I would imagine at this very moment on, what's today, January 20th, Ryan Poles probably knows who it's going to be. All right, our next question comes from my buddy Xavier, at Kobe from Deep on Twitter. He says, would you rather stay at number one and get Caleb and Dallas Turner / Romeo Odunze at 9, or trade down with the Patriots and get Drake Maye plus draft capital plus Odunze / Turner? Here's the thing. I don't think there's really going to be a world where Ryan Poles is willing to trade down if he wants a quarterback. Like, I get it on paper. It's like, yeah, you don't want Caleb, you trade down a spot, and you know that the team that you're trading with is 100% going to draft Caleb. Like, in theory, yeah, GMs work differently, right? I know Ryan Poles kind of did this last year with the whole trading down a spot with the Eagles thing to select Darnell Wright, let them get Jalen Carter. I get that. I think it's a little bit different when you're talking about quarterbacks and the number one overall pick. Because it would be very easy for a GM to be like, yeah, man, we're going to take Caleb at 1. You know, if Drake Maye's your guy, right? It would be very easy for them to be like, yeah, we're going to take Caleb at 1. You don't have to worry about it. And then they turn around and take Drake Maye. Like, I don't know. I think that's really risky. Now, if Poles could pull it off, fuck yes. I would love it. More draft capital, please. That would be fantastic. Plus, I really like Drake Maye, and we'll talk about that. Now, as for the other guys, I admittedly am not too deep into scouting. I have only scouted Caleb and Maye. So I can't really speak too much to Turner, Adunze, anyone like that. So I know there's a lot of people on Twitter that seem to like them. I know Adunze is a pretty highly touted receiver. I'm excited to watch his film. I've heard a lot of great things. Same thing with Dallas Turner, obviously. Alabama defensive lineman can't go wrong there. So I get where you're coming from. I think it's a really risky move, but I mean, if Poles could get his guy and extra draft capital, like, yeah, you don't say no to that. I don't think it's very likely, but if he can pull it off, yes, absolutely. Next up, we got a question from my buddy Vita Van Pelt, who was on our Carolina Panthers team preview. He says 3 to 5 characteristics of a good play caller. Well, honestly, I could just sit here and list off every characteristic Kyle Shanahan possesses and move on. But to be more specific, flexibility, I think, is the big thing. You know, you never know what a defense is going to throw at you. You got to be ready to pull anything out of your bag at any given moment. I think creativity is a big thing. Obviously, the best play callers in the league are creative. They find innovative ways to get the ball into their best playmakers' hands and let them make a play. And hell, even the worst offensive coordinator has a moment of genius. Luke Getsy this year with the DJ Moore rushing touchdown that got copied by like everyone immediately. Creativity is almost like part of the bare minimum for being a play caller. And I would say, flexibility, creativity, and the knowledge of what you have in your arsenal is really important. We saw the Falcons this year be a victim of that with Arthur Smith, who I personally don't think is a terrible play caller. But we saw him kind of misusing his talent. You know, you would have Kyle Pitts block, and then you'd send Jonnu Smith out on a route. Bijan Robinson getting less carries than Tyler Algier. Like, to a certain point, I get it. You want to keep defenses on their toes. But then there's also outsmarting yourself, which I think is another good characteristic, knowing when you're outsmarting yourself rather than outsmarting the other team. Because there are guys that get too cute and try to do these crazy things, and what ends up happening is they end up shooting themselves in the foot because they think they're being creative and innovative, and in reality, they're just being too complicated and overthinking things, and I think the Atlanta Falcons are another great example of that. So, I got 4 for you there. We'll go with creativity, adaptability, knowing what's in your arsenal, and knowing how to not outsmart yourself, or knowing when not to get cute. However you want to word that, it means the same thing. But again, Kyle Shanahan. I mean, I know that's like the cop-out answer just to say be Kyle Shanahan, but I mean, it's the right one, right? But yeah, I think, I don't know, I'm stalling because I'm trying to think of a 5th one just to get that 5th one in there. I don't know, let me know down in the comments below. What are the 3 to 5 characteristics of a good play caller, in your opinion? Or if you just have a 5th one you want to tag on to my answer, let me know down in the comments below, and I will be happy to read them and reply if you think of something that I totally blanked on, because I didn't look at any of these ahead of time. I should preface that. I should have said that at the start, but you know what? We'll just keep rolling. All right, we got another Miller Football Channel veteran here, Patrick Seifer, also known as No Huddle NFL. Definitely make sure to follow him on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube if you're not already. He says, why should Panthers fans have any optimism for Bryce Young after how bad he looked this year? Well, Panthers fans, if any of you are watching, I mean this with the utmost respect to you, not to your organization, but to you. That organization is a dumpster fire. David Tepper, no clue what he's doing. Scott Fitterer was a terrible GM. Frank Reich was not doing a great job. I still like Frank Reich. He was not doing a great job in Carolina. Everything that could have gone wrong for Bryce did go wrong. Bryce is my QB1 in the draft. I think he's incredible. I think we saw a lot of the flashes of what you want to see this year. But when you have inept people running your team, no offensive line, no real receiving threats, no run game to rely on, no defense to keep you off the field, it's tough. It's really tough as not only a rookie quarterback, but the smallest rookie quarterback ever. Like, Bryce Young was at a massive disadvantage this year in Carolina. So I think if the Panthers are able to get legitimate talent around him, and I don't mean in the sense of like, people saying Justin Fields would be a superstar if he just had, prime Randy Moss and Jerry Rice and Walter Payton and the Great Wall of Dallas in front of him. I mean like competent football players around him. Like, his offensive line most of those guys are not NFL caliber football players. His running back room, I know Chuba Hubbard kind of picked it up towards the end, but Miles Sanders was a massive disappointment. The receiver room, your best pass catcher was Adam Thielen, who's like 73, geriatric, and has a metal hip. Like, it's really, really tough. So Bryce really didn't have a chance this year. So if you can get the GM hire right, which again, with David Tepper as your owner, is easier said than done. But if you can get the GM hire right, you can get a good head coach in the building, there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about Bryce. If you want to be optimistic about Bryce, look up his highlights from this year, because what he put on tape as highlights, I think that's Bryce Young. I think that's the quarterback you drafted #1 overall. You gave up fan favorite DJ Moore for. That is the guy. Not the little guy that was getting blown up every play. That's not Bryce. That's a victim. Bryce is the superstar in the making that you're going to see on those highlight reels. And normally I don't advocate for just watching the highlights, but in this situation, in this context, go do it. If not for me, just do it for your own sake, your own mental health. Sell yourself on Bryce Young, because if you do it now, you're going to be reaping the benefits very quickly, and you're going to thank me for it later. All right, our next question here comes from my other podcast co-host, Jake Talks Sports. He says, genuine thoughts on Jordan Love. And look, it's not apparent by my hoodie and my hat and the entirety of everything I've ever talked about on this channel. I'm a Bears fan, right? For any new viewers out there. I hate how good Jordan Love is. I really do. Early in the season, I was very much on the boat of like, okay, he's making strides, but he's still just like driving the bus. He's not doing anything to elevate the team yet. And granted, that was okay. That wasn't even a slight at Jordan Love. That was just, hey, he's a guy who this is his first full year starting. I don't expect him to elevate his team and be phenomenal. I expect him to drive the bus for the majority of the year, especially because the receiver room I didn't have as much confidence in as apparently I should have, because those guys look a lot better than I would have expected. But my genuine thoughts were like, he's going to drive the bus. He's going to prove that he is headed in the right direction for Green Bay. They're going to get some talent around him, and then they'll go on from there. But no, this kid's making Rodgers-type throws. I said kid, he's older than me. Goodness. It's so funny. He's been in the league for what, like 4 or 5 years now? I think 4 years. Yeah, 2020. He was the year before Fields. So 4 years, and that was like technically his rookie season, right? His first year as a starter. So he feels a little bit younger than he is. But point is, he's out here making throws that we've seen Rodgers make, that we've seen Mahomes make. They're looking a little Mahomey. You know, I'm going to go with the Rodgers comparison because it's more fitting, right? He learned from Rodgers. The off-platform throws, the under pressure with 3 dudes in his face, being able to manipulate the pocket, being able to read defenses effectively. I hate what I see from Jordan Love simply because I'm getting Vietnam-like flashbacks. Like, Jordan Love is good, dude. He is straight nails, and I hate it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and rave about Jordan Love forever because it hurts my soul every positive thing I say about him, even though Jordan Love's a great kid. Again, I said kid, a great guy. I'm rooting for him individually because he's a good guy. And, you know, if you haven't heard about his story, go look into it. I'm not going to share the details here, but he's been through a lot. He deserves success. So I'm rooting for Jordan Love individually, but I'd be lying if I said I don't want Joe Barry to stay around, so his like really good performances can be ruined by bad defensive play. But Joe Barry just had a good defensive game last week against the Cowboys, so I don't know. Maybe he figured it out too, and God hates me, and I'm just here to suffer. But yeah, genuine thoughts on Jordan Love. He's nails, and I hate it. I hate it here. All right, our next question here is from Valente. So we've got another 2-parter. Football related. Do you think Kyle Juszczyk, can't spell his name, so he said Kyle Juszczyk, excuse me, and Pat Ricard could beat Brock Lesnar in an MMA fight? Well, Kyle Juszczyk is like the epitome of a dude bro, like wannabe MMA guy. You know, if you saw, I think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago, him and George Kittle were putting moves on each other at the Pro Bowl. Pat Ricard weighs 300 pounds. So, yeah, I'm not I don't know. MMA makes it a little interesting. I don't know how trained Brock Lesnar is in MMA because I don't follow like the WWE and stuff. I don't know if he's just a wrestler or if he's like secretly like a fucking judo kickboxer that knows like Krav Maga or some shit. But I think straight up, sure, fuck it. Fullback's better. Point blank period. Fullback's better, so yes. All right, we've got a question from Tristan here, who is a Cowboys fan. If it's not apparent by the @CookedByFerg, which is recent. I didn't know he changed his @. How do the Cowboys fix the culture in the locker room so we become better equipped in the playoffs? Look, I'm not in that locker room, so I don't know what's going on. I can't necessarily speak to how you fix the culture for a team without being on the team, right? Unless there's like a glaring issue, like the Chicago Bears under Matt Nagy. It was very clear that there was a coaching issue, there was a lack of discipline, there was a lack of effort. So the clear answer, you fire Nagy and move on. The Cowboys, I think that might have been pretty close with Mike McCarthy. Not to the same extent, but the same idea, where Mike McCarthy is very clearly not a great leader. The Cowboys decided to keep him. So I don't know where you would go from there. Maybe tell Jerry Jones not to come in anymore. Just tell Jerry to stay home. That would probably help a little bit, I'm sure. But culture, I don't know. I really don't. I think not even personnel wise, just like team wise, the best thing I can think of to like better equipped in the playoffs in terms of play, I think the number one thing that comes to mind is figuring out how to run the football again. You know, it's a passing league. People like to overlook running the football. All the best teams can run the football in January. They all can. That's why Buffalo has always had limited playoff success, because they can't run the ball when it gets cold. They've never been able to run the ball. They're starting to be able to run the ball now, which is why we might have a different story on our hands. But you think last year, Philadelphia, was it last year? Yeah, last year, Philly went to the Super Bowl. Fantastic running football team. The Chiefs, they could run the football. Were they the greatest? No, but they could run the football. They're in the Super Bowl. You need to be able to run the football in January. Dallas could not run the football because, number one, they didn't know how to use their short yardage backs. They didn't use a short yardage back. You know, they lost that Zeke role. Number two, Tony Pollard just isn't a lead back. He's a nice change of pace guy. He's a nice lightning to somebody's thunder. Like, him and Zeke were a good duo. You take Zeke out of that, Pollard can't be the guy. He's just not. So you got to get your running back situation figured out. I don't know if they'll want to draft one. I don't know if they're going to try to pay Saquon in free agency if he hits the open market, what they want to do. Running backs I know are very taboo, but you got to figure it out because Pollard just isn't the guy. And then you can start using Hunter Lipke on short yardage situations. I will advocate for that until the cows come home. That's what he should have been this year. Didn't work for the Cowboys. Or the Cowboys didn't work with it, rather, is a better way to put it. It would have worked if they did it. But yeah, in terms of culture, I don't know. I'm not in that locker room, so I can't really say. But in terms of becoming better equipped in the playoffs, otherwise, learn to run the football. It'll pay dividends, I promise. Our next question here comes from Walter Whiteseal, and he asks, how do the Philadelphia Eagles prevent their inevitable regression next year? Three main things. Number one, you got to get young talent. The Philadelphia Eagles do not have a lot of young talent. They have a lot of talent, don't get me wrong. A lot of it's getting up there in age, right? You look at Kelsey, who's already mulling retirement. You look at Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Kevin Byard, Darius Slay, James Bradbury, Shaq Leonard. All those guys are starting. They're all north of 30 or right around there. One or two of them might be under 30. But either way, they're playing like they're in their 30s. You got Lane Johnson, who's up there. So you need young talent. That's big, right? Philadelphia's been adding a bunch of veteran presence, and like that's great. You've got enough veteran presence for 4 football teams. You need some young guys. They had some young guys this year that stepped up. You know, you've obviously got Jalen Carter. Jordan Davis has been playing well. Sidney Brown had a couple splash plays. You know, you've got some young guys. You need more. Number 2, you need depth. If somebody goes down in Philadelphia, it's curtains. Right? There's a lot of positions where they just don't have depth. They have so much depth on the defensive line, but they don't have any anywhere else. So you got to find a way to get more depth. And number 3, and this is the biggest thing, I've been raving about this for weeks, figure out your freaking run game. The Philadelphia Eagles have forgotten how to run the football. Their offense is so heavily predicated on running the football, but they can't do it anymore. Last year, their offense was I think it was number 1 or number 2 in rushing EPA per play. It was them and the Chicago Bears were the top 2. They were awesome at running the football last year. And that opened up their passing game so much because they had this RPO system where it would be like, you either hand off the ball or Jalen Hurts throws a 50-50 ball down the sideline. And when you run the ball well, you pull everybody in. That's what the Eagles did well. They pulled everybody in, and then they'd leave, your 2 boundary receivers one-on-one on an island. You could throw it up to A.J. Brown. You throw it up to A.J. Brown, a 50-50 ball becomes like a 90-10 ball for him, right? You need to establish the run. And I know people were excited about DeAndre Swift this year. I know he was a very productive back. Their offense took a clear step back with him as the lead back. He's just not that guy. Just like Tony Pollard, he's a good change of pace back. He's a good scat back. He is not an every down back. He cannot be your top running back if you want to be a serious football team that can run the football. Now, I'm not saying Philadelphia has to go out and spend $1 billion on a running back this year. Just draft a guy. You've got Blake Corum. You've got the kid from Wisconsin. Again, I haven't done a ton of scouting yet, but there's a lot of solid running backs in this upcoming class. Plus, running back, you don't have to get a superstar. You just need a guy that can run between the tackles effectively. DeAndre Swift just doesn't have the patience or the vision for that. If he's not running the ball to the outside, if he's not running the ball off tackle, he's not going to do anything. Or if he doesn't have a wide open lane in front of him, his first read, he's not going to do anything. He's just going to sit back there and dance, and he's going to get lost, and you're not going to get a bunch of yards. He's just not that type of back. They need a legit back that can help them out in big situations, and DeAndre Swift just isn't that. So young talent, depth, and a real running back. Those are the 3 keys for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they'll be very helpful. I don't know what their cap situation looks like off the top of my head, unfortunately, so I don't know where they're going to be with some of their veterans, but you might have to get some of those guys out of there. It's going to suck, but you might have to. It might be the only way. I still have faith in the Eagles. I have a lot of faith in Jalen Hurts still. I know I'm one of the few, but I like what they've built. For the most part, I like their infrastructure. I think you just need some tweaks, and I think the Eagles can be maybe not as dominant as they were last year, but definitely in a really good spot. All right, here is the big question, the question that inspired the thumbnail. Can Drake Maye be QB1? This is coming to us from Nicole, who, as I mentioned, is a member of my podcast, The Bear Down Boys, probably asking this question for the sake of dialogue with the first overall pick. I think yes. I think there is a world where you can argue that Drake Maye is QB1. I think right now, from watching the 2 of them, I think him and Caleb are 1A, 1B. It's kind of a pick your poison thing. Now, both quarterbacks are a lot more similar than people want to pretend they are. It's not like Drake is this perfect pocket passer that can't move, and Caleb is this totally unpredictable wild card that has no idea how to play in structure. It's more like they're both a combination of each other, but Drake is definitely better at playing in structure, and Caleb is definitely better at improvising. So it's kind of a pick your poison. Do you want the guy who is essentially Justin Herbert with maybe a little more mobility? Or do you want the guy who's like Mahomes and Allen coming out where they're super raw and you kind of got to reel them in? It depends on how much you trust your offensive staff. It depends on what team we're talking about. For a team like Chicago, I would not be shocked if Drake Maye was their QB1. You just had the fun improviser with all the tools, all the traits. That didn't quite work out. Maybe I'm being a little too kind to Fields calling him an improviser. He's really more of a scrambler. But maybe that left a bad taste in your mouth. Maybe you want somebody who works in structure a little bit better. You've seen work in structure. You've seen execute an offense. Maybe you want Drake. I won't lie. I like Drake a little bit more for that reason. And again, that's a little bit of my bias seeping in. I think Caleb is the better football player, not by a wide margin, but by a little bit. Again, 1A, 1B. But I lean Drake in terms of who I like and who I would want in Chicago, primarily because of Fields leaving a bad taste in my mouth. Like, I get it. I'm not going to be upset if you go either way. You win. It's a win-win, right? Don't bring the other guys in. Just keep it these 2. It's a win-win. But I think it really depends on who you ask, what traits you value, what you're looking for, what type of quarterback you want. It's definitely arguable. There's definitely a conversation to be had. And I'm sick and tired of people writing off Drake as like, yeah, he's QB2, or he's closer to Jaden Daniels or Michael Penix or whoever than he is Caleb Williams. That's just not the case. It is 1A and 1B. At best, it is 1 and 2 in a tier, and then a tier break, and then everybody else. These two are a lot closer than people want to pretend. Bears fans, I know you see number 10 from North Carolina, and something in your brain clicks, and you have a spasm. This is not Mitch Trubisky. Drake Maye is a billion times the prospect Mitch Trubisky ever was. He's better than Trubisky is right now or ever has been. There's nothing in they have nothing in common other than their the school they went to. They're alumni from the same school, is what I was trying to say. So the school they went to, the number on their jersey, and the color of their skin, they have 3 things in common. And they are the 3 most basic things you can have in common with another human being. So don't worry about the, oh, I'm getting Trubisky flashbacks. No, you're not. You're just looking for excuses. Drake Maye is not Mitch Trubisky. He is his own man. He has ice in his motherfucking veins. And this kid's going to be a star in the NFL. So can Drake Maye be QB1? I think yes. Again, I think it comes down to personal preference, but I think there's absolutely a world where he's QB1. I think there's an argument that you can make that he's your QB1, and I don't think you're crazy if you say that. All right, here we've got another member of my podcast, the Bear Down Boys. Once again, link in the description. Grayson, also known as the Bat Duck, he asks, what Pokemon would be the best fullback? I'm not going to answer that question. Instead, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm working on a video right now where I'm constructing a lineup of all Pokemon. An offense and a defense, including a fullback. Yeah, I'm making this video. I'm excited about it. I've got the roster made. I'm working on the editing process and the recording process. It's going to be a ton of fun. So be on the lookout for that. Hopefully should be out next week. If not, it'll be the week after, but you'll find out my answer to this in due time. I think this is an appropriate question to follow that up with. We got Devin here asking, why do you like fullbacks so much? Well, without going too much deep into the Miller football lore, my dad played fullback in high school. Now, my dad's not one of those guys who still brags about what he did in high school. It's just when I was growing up, and my dad was trying to get me into football, because I didn't get into football until I was like 10. Up until then, I was big into like the Mario Brothers and Indiana Jones and Pokemon and all that. My dad supports my nerdy hobbies, but back then, he still wanted a son that liked football. So finally, he was like, what if I got you to start watching my old high school tapes? Because my grandparents had them saved, because who doesn't want to reminisce on old times, right? So I started watching them, and my dad's offense, they ran a wing T, and he was the primary ball carrier. So when I first got into football, I was like, wow, fullbacks are badass. And I wasn't wrong, but I had a wrong idea of why they were badass. Because here I was thinking they were the focal point of every offense. They were Superman. They were carrying teams on their back. And it didn't help that one of the first NFL players I got highlights of was Mike Allstott, which is why he's my favorite fullback ever, is because my dad, when he was trying to get me into football, he showed me his highlights. He had me watching Bears games, and then he told me about Mike Allstott. And that's when I was like, okay. I get it now. Fullbacks, they're the second coming, right? So then when I was growing up, I was big into Marcel Reese. I was a big fan of Pat DeMarco, of Anthony Sherman, of Jerome Felton, of Henry Hynoski, the Hinoceros. You know, all these fun fullbacks of like the late 2000s, early 2010s. That was what I grew up on. Tyler Klutz of the Chicago Bears was one of my favorites. Like, it's just kind of how I got into the sport. Fullbacks were kind of like my entrance to it. And then I started making content about them a little bit later. Again, not to get too deep into it about why I started making content, but that's a conversation for another time. But I did make a video jokingly about, I think it was somebody got a contract. Can't remember who it was off the top of my head. A fullback got a contract. Might have been Juszczyk getting extended. But a fullback got a contract, and I made a TikTok, and I was like, this is the biggest thing to happen this offseason, right? And it was that real crazy offseason where A.J. Brown got traded and all that. I said, this is the biggest thing to happen this offseason. And people were like, haha, that guy talking about fullbacks, he's funny. So, and that got a little bit of attention. I was like, so what if I keep talking about him? And I kept talking about him and talking about him. So people like that I like fullbacks. That's why I talk about him a lot. It's gotten me attention from actual NFL fullbacks. It's something I'm very passionate about. So that's the Miller football fullback lore. They're in video. So if you ever want to come back to this, if anyone ever asks you, why does Miller football like fullbacks? There you go. Show them this clip. And you'll have your answer. But, yeah, that's there's that. That's why I like fullbacks so much. I'm just rambling at this point. So let's move on to the next question. All right, next up, we've got a question from my buddy Josh, someone I went to school with all of my life and is a dear friend to me. He asks me, Messi or Ronaldo? Do you think this is a fucking joke, Joshua? Do you think when I ask for football questions, I want to talk about fucking soccer? I don't fucking know. You think, I don't know. I'm an American. I don't watch soccer. All right, our next question comes from the host of Keeping Up with the Commanders, Mason Kinahan, who asks, the 2024 Bears quarterback is not Justin Fields. That's what I'll say. Not Justin Fields. He's obviously asking because the Commanders have the number 2 pick, and whoever the Bears don't take is probably who's going to be the Commanders quarterback. Not Justin Fields. That's my answer. Probably Caleb. I mean, if we're being 100% honest with ourselves here, probably Caleb, but there is a small sliver, or there is hope in me that Drake's in the conversation, that they want Drake. Like I said already, I think there's a conversation to be had for sure. I think Drake can be the number 1 pick, but I don't know. I don't know how Poles is feeling, so we'll have to see. But yeah, the answer, 100% not Justin Fields. That's the best way I can put it. But anyways, that is going to do it for this video. There were a couple questions I didn't get around to answering because they were either redundant or I just didn't have an answer for. So if that's the case, I apologize. But if you want to be featured in a video like this again, because I would love to do it again more towards draft time, maybe ask draft-centric questions, make sure to follow me on Twitter, @MillerFootball_. There's always a link in the description. If not, you can just check it out. I know the app's not called Twitter anymore. We don't call it this in this house. It's not a thing we do. We don't talk about the man who owns this website. But that being said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to leave a like down below. Helps out the channel a ton, shows your support, shows you care, all that good stuff. And also make sure to subscribe. We've got a ton of fun NFL content coming your way over the next few months. We're going to get into draft coverage here soon. This is a little bit of a taste of that with the Caleb and Drake talk. We'll definitely get more into that. I want to do a Drake Maye film review at some point. Either way, we'll definitely be doing some prospect film breakdowns. I'll be breaking down my top 10 at every position. At some point, I'll probably make a big board video. We'll have mock drafts with trades, with friends, all that good stuff. You won't want to miss out on it. It's a ton of fun. So definitely make sure to subscribe, and also make sure to leave a comment down below, responding to any of these questions yourself. Like I said, specifically with that one about the traits of a good offensive coordinator, good play caller. You want to weigh in on the Caleb Drake debate, whatever. Let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to have a conversation with you. But yeah, that'll do it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. And to everyone out there watching, I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, night, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it because you're all wonderful people and you deserve it.